period we're living in. I'm old enough to remember 1968 and some of the things that were going on, and it's eerily familiar. It's kind of scary, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. So we are at 10 o'clock. I'm going to ask that all participants mute their selves so that we can go ahead and get started. We will be having people periodically joining us throughout this, and we might pop a reminder if anyone becomes unmuted for whatever reason. Welcome, welcome. Today we are here. I am JenGaudet of JenGaudet Coaching Services. What I do is I help people to become the CEO of their businesses and their lives. And I am here with David Kirkwood.
So my name is David Kirkwood, Executive Coach with JenGaudet Coaching Services. 15 years in oil and gas, industrial projects, and 10 years in leadership.
And we are here today to really help dive in the conversation about networking and how important are relationships. So building relational capital, networking for success to find your next opportunity. If you are on this call, you are in the right place if you're perhaps looking for your next W-2 opportunity, if you're looking perhaps to shift to another industry because you are tired of the roller coaster ups and downs in the oil and gas industry. And if you've been wanting to maybe switch out of what you're doing altogether, maybe have an entrepreneurial bug, this will be applicable to you as well. So what we are not going to do today is dive really deep into some of the other things that are coming soon. For example, we will talk about how to get in the door for your next interview or for your next one-on-one, but we're not gonna go through exact skill sets once you're already in the door. That is actually our workshop next week. So we have planned a series of content to really just help those who are experiencing this downturn or who wanna maybe get ahead with some skill sets. Without further ado, this is who we are. If you want to go ahead and take a screenshot, feel free to do so. That way you can reach out to us. We will pop this up in the end of the slideshow as well. We really want you to be able to understand that David and I are both a resource for you. So before we get started on the webinar, a couple of housekeeping items. If you are watching this and a question comes up at any given slide, we are going to ask that questions be held until the end. But if that question is burning, I would like you to explore the chat function. So if you'll go up to the three dots that say more and open that up, that gives you the chat. And if you look, there is a little blue pop down. Make sure it says, if it says all panelists, make sure it says all panelists and attendees, or make sure it says everyone. Depending on the device you're on, it is something different. So make sure it's either set to everyone or all participants. And this is so important because what that does is your question is valuable, and we may not actually ask the question itself. We may just address the answer in the content as that pops up. And so that gives everyone listening the benefit of knowing what the question is. It is so powerful. And if we're doing the presentation and you have the question, I 1000% guarantee someone else has the question for you. Please feel free to use the chat function at any time if there's any additional content, and we are going to have you pop in there a couple times later on in here.
And I wanted to point out, we did receive everyone's questions from the emails. Thank you so much for those who did ask those questions. This webinar will go on for approximately 1 hour, so please stick around. We'll answer the questions towards the end of the webinar.
Absolutely. And if you're coming and you didn't have questions, but questions pop up, we will have a live Q&A at the end of the content. Once again, our content was geared towards the feedback we got from everyone who responded. And so we're really excited to deliver this action-packed content to you guys. And of course, as I've already alluded to, we do have a series of content-based webinars that are free going on for the next couple of weeks so that we can continue to dive into the areas that really serve you. And if you're looking to get a little bit more one-on-one, we will have the ability to discuss how that works with you. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Fantastic. Today we are here talking about networking, building relational capital, external versus internal networking. First things first. Internal networking means networking within your own industry And it also means networking within your own organization. External networking means networking outside of your company or corporation, and it means outside of your core industry. Why is this important to discuss? We'll go into that in just a minute.
So what is relationship capital anyway? So think of if you're in Facebook and you had 5,000 friends and you spent a year just connecting with everybody kind of randomly. And so you would have a lot of connections, right? But then think of the person who maybe only has 35 connections, but that person is in regular networking groups, maybe on evenings, maybe they've met them in person, or they've added value to those people, or maybe value to people they know. The relationship capital of the person with the fewer people could actually be greater. And so we'll go into that a little bit more. So why build a relationship through external networking? If you're accustomed to internal networking, I want to share something. I actually did a survey of folks within my company and learned that most people are very comfortable networking within their own company. And why is that? Because there is an inherent know-like trust. You see the people every day. Maybe you've been working with them for years. You understand the culture of that company, and so you almost know what to expect if you reach out to somebody within the company. Now, external networking can be challenging, right? You don't know the culture of where they come from, or you don't know what they value, and so it becomes a challenge to reach out to them directly. So what are the impacts of having a broader network? One of the things you may think is that, well, I need to network externally with people who are exactly like me. And that may not be the case. You may have somebody who isn't not in the same industry as you necessarily, but they may know somebody who is in an industry that you would like to get into. And so that's the power of relationship capital. And so strong relationship capital results in finding opportunities before they are posted. If you're not networking the traditional way, if your next play is to find the next W-2, would simply be to post a resume to an employer. It will filter through their HR system. Maybe the hiring manager looks at it, maybe they don't. So the challenge would be, who can you learn? Who can you get to know at that company to start establishing those relationships before an opportunity is even created?
Also, if you're here and you're like, wait, I'm still employed and I'm here to gain skill sets, or if you're looking to position yourself even stronger for your next W-2, what networking does is it sets you for success in business development. When we think about business development, it means a whole lot of different things to a whole lot of different people. But at the crux of it is bringing business in. And when we talk about downturns, particularly, we'll use oil and gas. David has worked in oil and gas for many, many years, and he's lived through 3 of these such downturns. The core team, yes, they have strong technical skills and they're subject matter experts. However, they also have soft skills that are critical. For example, self-leadership, a strong network, and the ability to bring in work or position the company to bring in work. So why is it so important for us to network both internally and externally? It's to build that network of influence and build that relational capital for when it is a downturn. Perhaps you can reach out to your neighbor whose wife works at a company that you want to be able to do business with that might actually be able to bring business into your organization. And what it does is it raises your stock within your company or your corporation. So positioning for business development, building those relationships, so when you do have a downturn, if you're always there and growing a relationship, you feel comfortable saying, hey, listen, we're in a downturn. It's really kind of a struggle, and this is the thing that I really could use help with. And that person who you've built a strong relationship might say, hey, you know what? I know somebody working for ABC company that you just said you want a relationship with. Let me connect you. And so this positions you both from a business development within an organization or for your next opportunity, or if you want to go out on your own and an opportunity has been created. Because when we have pandemic and we have crisis, disruption creates problems, or opportunities. Based off of how we view that, if we're looking at the opportunities, we can have a business development background. We can go to our network and we can gather intelligence about what's the next step, what's the next program to develop to bring the company forward and to really take advantage for that opportunity. So I'm going to leave this slide with your network is your net worth. And I'm going to give you an example of that. One of my clients was in real estate for many, many years. She did management of multiple properties. And what happened was, and this is before pandemic, she decided she was kind of tired of where she was going and she wanted to switch industries. Real estate, just like oil and gas, has its ups and downs. It was in a cycle that was really not producing where she was living. And so she built a lot of very strong relationships. And what happened was when she wanted to make that shift from managing all of these real estate properties, she reached out to the network and said, hey, listen, like I really feel called to go into a health service organization. I don't have any connections in that area of the world, but who do you know? And because she had built relational capital and networked outside of just real estate, because as you guys heard, David is in oil and gas. I am a coach. We're completely separate and we're not in real estate. Well, now we are, but that's a whole separate ballgame. But at the time we were not in real estate, but we knew people. I have a background in sports medicine. So I have an extensive medical network and was able to connect her because she said, hey, this is what I want to do. And it set off that light bulb because we built that relationship. She had that ask and I was able to connect her and she found that new opportunity. She had 11 opportunities 11 interviews in an industry she had never worked in based off of her skill sets that were able to translate and her network capital, her relational capital. So your network truly is your net worth. And let's go to the next slide. It seems to be frozen. There we go. How do we get started? This is the most important thing. If you are not comfortable getting into a room of people that maybe you don't know, that is perfectly normal. 93% of the population has a fear of public speaking. Going into a room plays on that same fear. So let's talk about what you can do to position yourself for success if you're uncomfortable or maybe you're an introvert. So first things first, the power of presence. You have one chance to make a first impression. Only one, no more. And how do we make a first impression? It happens in the first 7 to 13 seconds that someone sees you. So when you walk into the room, ask yourself, do I have a powerful presence? Do people notice when I walk into the room? If the answer to that is no, there are a few things that we can do. We can dress the parts. I'm speaking to a room full of professionals. You already know this, but professional attire is key. If you are walking into an interview and you have a wrinkled suit or you don't even have a suit, you have a coat and slacks that don't match, what is the first impression that you're giving to the person across the table? So professional attire, being well groomed. This doesn't mean you need a whole bunch of makeup if you're a female or like the slickest hairdo. What it means is you need to be clean, kempt. If you're unkempt, if your shirt is not tucked in, then that is something that impedes your positive first impression. And let's talk about the appearance of confidence. Whether or not you have it, an upright posture, walking into the room with your head held high, your shoulders rolled back, making eye contact, or even scanning the room. If you're an introvert, I understand this is challenging. People don't know you're making eye contact. You could be scanning and looking at different points in the room that are on eye level with the rest of the people in the room, and that works. It's you making an attempt to see the landscape before you. So that is really the first part of presence. The second part is your interaction. When you walk in with presence and you have that presence, people feel compelled to come have a conversation with you. Or maybe you notice somebody when you scan the room and you're like, that's the person I want to know. You make eye contact and you approach them. So I'm going to do a little asterisk disclaimer here. Right now, handshakes aren't exactly the way to go in a lot of places. In some places it's okay, in some places it's not because of what's going on with the pandemic. So if a handshake is appropriate, considering social distance and comfort level, a firm handshake is key. And the other part of that is, just as in the picture behind this slide, lean in. When you shake hands, you want to lean into that person to show that you're engaging. Finally, come prepared. Do your homework. If you're going to a broader networking meeting, have an idea of what are your goals for that meeting. It might be, I want to meet 3 key people and set up one-to-ones. It might be that you're walking into a one-on-one. Do your homework on the person that you're meeting with. Go to their website, stalk their social media a little bit, learn something about them so that you know and have prepared a couple of key questions that you'd like to ask them to start the conversation.
And unless you have an eidetic memory, a photographic memory, it's important to take notes. So we'll go to our next slide, which is active listening. So some of the techniques. When I was first getting into supervision and leadership, this was a struggle for me. I've done a lot of work to get better at this. The first one I have on here is to quiet the inner mind. So what does that mean? If you're having a conversation with someone and you're formulating the response of what you're going to say to the person while they are talking, that's a distraction. You're not going to be able to listen to them fully to understand. And so one of the techniques you can use to help with this is right body language. If you're turned away and you're typing on a keyboard, or if you're looking at a computer screen and turning every once and again and going, I hear you, you're not. And in fact, that body language itself will communicate to the other person that you do not want to listen to them. So what you want to do is square your body language, take your smartphone, put it away, turn it off, make sure you're maintaining eye contact. And the other thing you want to pay attention to, which you may not think about, is to relax your body. Find some way, maybe it's a breathing exercise, because you want to put the other person at ease. If you come up with your shoulders in your ears and yes, I'm ready to talk to you, you might steer them away. So think about that. So another technique I like to use is parroting. And so after you've heard everything that they have said, you want to report back to them what you've heard and ask for understanding. So an example, hey, I liked your idea to put together a client survey for an automatic bus transfer scheme. Send me a draft and let's make that thing happen. So that's the next action thing, which is to take action on what they recommend. If you cannot take action on what they recommend, tell them why. We can't take action on that because we don't have the resources to make that thing happen. I wanted to let you know that I explored it. It just can't happen today. Remember the little things. This is important from the previous slide, is to take notes. So I'll give an example about adding value and how note-taking helped with the client later on. And so the other thing is asking an open-ended question. So you might ask a question, your favorite sport is football, is that right? If you ask a question that way, you're going to get a yes or no response. So that's very narrow. You could ask a question a different way. You could say, what are your 3 favorite hobbies to do over the weekend? And all of a sudden, you've got this open-ended response where they're going to tell you a story. So think of asking questions in a way that a person will tell you a story and you'll learn a lot more, such that you can add value later, which is a great segue. So what are techniques for adding value? Find out what they value and why they value them. Why is it important to you to go for walks in the park on weekends? Well, I'm introverted and it helps me to recharge and I show up my best self the next day. Oh, I do the same thing. That's a common value. Share your values and focus on the thing that you value the same. So an example for adding value, and this was just recently, I had a client. Hi client, I remember your son graduated as an environmental engineer. I talked to a couple of my connections within the company who both have 20 plus years of experience, and they said they'd be more than happy to take a look at your son's resume. Would that be of value to you? Oh, absolutely. He's been struggling to find a position, and I would be so grateful if you could help me out. So just one example. So the way that you add value might not be in the way that you expect, right? Because you're adding value for the things they care about, not you.
That's such a fantastic example, and we could cite hundreds of examples exactly like that. You may not know where the value add comes from. It might be something that you completely don't expect. But what is key is listening, active listening, being engaged in the conversation, not listening to answer or reply, but listening to hear what it is that your customer, client, networking, whoever you're trying to build a relationship with needs or wants. And so part of that is situational awareness. We talked a little bit about situational awareness earlier when we talked about the handshake. Remember, we're in COVID, so maybe a handshake is not appropriate. Assessing the situation. Are they leaning in to go for the handshake, or are they backing up because they're like, wait, social distancing? So this is key to pay attention to the body language across the table from you or across the room or whomever you're meeting with. We like to say some of the basic things that you can pay attention to. Are they leaned back? Look at yourself right now. Are you in your chair like this, leaned back, like just kind of half paying attention, maybe looking on your phone doing something else? That means you're disengaged. Are you kind of neutral, like, maybe I like this, maybe I don't know where I'm gonna do, when you're doing the cha-cha across the line and you're in that neutral spot? That means that I'm not giving you enough engaging information, or we're not fully engaged in the conversation. Or are you leaned in? Are you taking notes? Are you looking and learning more? These are all key skill sets that you can look at yourself right now. How are you engaged with this content? And then apply how your body language is to the next time you meet with someone in person, whether it's someone you've never met before or somebody that you knew. This is also key in Zoom. Right now we are in an age where maybe you're on Microsoft Teams, maybe you're on Zoom, maybe you're on Skype, one of the other. There are a whole multitude of video conferencing options that we're using right now. And so this is so key. When you have the gallery of people who you're meeting with, how are you showing up? Do you look like this? Because that's an indication that you're not paying attention. And notice that when your video is on, and in many of these team meetings with, in networking meetings especially, the people who have their videos on, those are the people I make a point to see. What are they doing? Are they engaged? Are they paying attention? And those are the people I'm gonna connect with. Because what I know is if their video is off, either A, they're not dressed for the part, B, they're only half listening, or C, this is running in the background while they're doing 1,000 other things. So they're not fully engaged, and so I'm not gonna bother to set up a one-on-one with them. Other people are seeing this across the screen from you. So do an audit, pay attention to the body language across the screen from you, and then learn the law of reciprocity.
So there's a book that a friend of mine recommended to me called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And there's this really cool example that was in there. If you've heard of DARPA, which stands for the Defense Advanced Research Agency, they do, I guess, research for advanced defense weaponry and things. And so the experiment that DARPA put on in the book was the 10 red balloon experiment. And so what the experiment was is they put 10 red balloons randomly in the United States. And the challenge was the participants had to come up with ways to find those balloons within 1 week. So they had these very sophisticated companies who had these software that linked to satellites and were plugging through social media in different kind of ways, very expensive, hefty kind of companies. What was interesting is there was a small team from MIT that entered the contest. Pretty well unorganized, not very well prepared, but what they did and how they wound up being successful was applying the law of reciprocity. And so here's what happened. They launched the contest, and all the team from MIT did was put out this blanket email, and it went something like this. If you are the direct person to find this red balloon, we'll give you $2,000. If a second tier network person found the red balloon or helped in any way, we'll give them $1,000. If it was a third network connection, we'll give them $500, and so on. When the contest started, everyone was expecting the high-powered tech team to win. And then after just under 9 hours, the contest was over and the MIT team won. So there's this scientific validity to vulnerability, putting yourself out there and asking for help, which is what this MIT team did in a creative way that added value not only to the first network people, but to multiples. And that's the law of reciprocity.
So now what? We've talked about a whole bunch of different things, and we want to have a lot of time because we received quite a few questions, and we want to be able to answer specifics to that. Action steps. If you are here listening to this and you are not planning to take action on anything that you've heard so far, this is pointless. You're wasting your time. We're wasting our time going through this because the key is learning plus putting it into motion. So my question to you at this point in our presentation is, what are you willing to work on today in the next 24 hours to move forward, to improve the way that you're able to build relational capital, to improve setting yourself up for success for your next opportunity? Is it doing a present audit? Is it being brutally honest with yourself and how you appear, either virtually or in person? Is it to look at your confidence and to practice eye contact with the people that you care about?
And so what's really powerful, you can go to a training and maybe you spend an hour just listening, but if you're not applying it, it's not going to stick. And so this is one of the things we talk about in professional coaching. So for active listening, the action step would be use parroting technique in 3 conversations this week and document how well you did. The way to improve is with consistency and persistency and measuring how well you're doing. When you start recording, hey, I didn't active listen. I only active listen in 1 out of 3 conversations. That's a measurable. You can take that and improve it for the next week. And then for adding value, learn 3 values and why they value them from at least one person this upcoming week and document what you learn.
So why are we talking about action steps now? Because just as David said, if we're not putting it into action, we don't grow. Everything that we're talking about today, networking, building relationships, active listening, presence, confidence, all of these things, you may be thinking, well, I'm an introvert and that's not me and I don't have this, that I wasn't born that way. But the reality is each and every one of these things are a skill set, just like any technical skill. And if you think back to when you were learning technical skills in your industry, then you know that you weren't just born that way. You didn't just automatically know what you needed to know for your career or profession. You had to learn, you had to practice. So what we're encouraging you to do is to pick just pick one thing to work on in the next 24 hours, and then start to work on it on a daily basis. Strive for the 1% improvement, and it becomes a skill set. There's a lot of research that shows that if you're uncomfortable walking into a room or public speaking or presenting, which newsflash, 93% of the population has that fear or that discomfort. You can improve your confidence when you present or when you stand in front of a room by practice. So the first time you do something, anything new, it's scary. You might fail. That's okay. It's key to take it, measure it, ask yourself, what is the one thing I'm going to do to try to improve upon this tomorrow, and continue to build that habit. After, for example, you've been in front of an audience 5 times presenting, could be just a room, the board of directors, or could be an entire department or even on stage. After 5 times, it's still a bit uncomfortable, but it's not nearly as bad as the first time. And after you've done this 10 times, the level of discomfort goes way down. It's like riding a bike. Oh, okay, I've been here, I've done this. Maybe you do have a little bit of butterflies. Maybe you have to do a breathing technique, but you've learned what works for you so that you can appear confident when you go and you give your 29-second pitch and when you go and you initiate a conversation. So these are all skill sets. Communication, active listening, networking, building relationships are skill sets that can be cultivated and learned. And we just want to impress upon you that these things, it does take time. It's not like you go from 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds and you got it. It takes practice. So the keys to success in networking, in building relationship, in getting to the next opportunity, and getting your foot in the door at the next interview, for example, it requires preparation, practice, and then visualizing your success, which we'll talk about in another time. So the beautiful thing that we're faced with right now is a blank canvas. That is what this pandemic has given us. Yes, there is disruption in the oil and gas industry. There's disruption in almost every industry right now. What an opportunity. Crisis provides the disruption that allows us to reflect. What are the ways that I can improve upon myself? What opportunities are out there? How can I position myself once the job market opens back up? It's an opportunity to close the gap in your skill sets. So if there's a technical skill you want to learn, this is the time to be learning it. But it's also the time to learn the crucial soft skills that are often overlooked. But I can tell you, because I work with quite a lot of engineering and oil and gas hiring managers, I work with recruiters, I work with a bunch of different industries, and what they look for is the soft skills. They won't tell you that across the table, but if you have excellent communication skills, if you actively listen, if you have something of value to bring in addition to your technical skill set, what happens in the interview process is it puts you right here. And I'm not gonna, you don't have to take my word for it. David is a hiring manager. He can explain that to you even more. So closing the gap in your technical skills is one piece, and closing the gap in your soft skills is another. And it's an amazing opportunity for us to establish new habits. Let's talk about support and accountability. Whenever we're learning new soft skills, whenever we're practicing something that's uncomfortable for us, you may be thinking to yourself, oh yeah, I'm self-motivated, I set goals, I get my goals done. Yeah, in some areas. But when it's uncomfortable, that's when we find excuses. We find ways, oh, next time, it's not so important to me. So what I would love to encourage the people here, if you feel comfortable doing so, pop in the chat which of the action steps you're going to actually practice. Otherwise, write it down. If you're not comfortable putting it in the chat for other people to see, write down which action step you want to work on based off of all the different things that we discussed today.
So next week, we're going to have another free workshop where we're going to change the topic a little bit, where relationship capital is something to help you get to the door. Well, what do you do once you're in the door? And so it will be on one-on-ones and interviewing, what to do once you're in the door. And for those of you who may be interested in a deeper dive, maybe a little bit more catered content, we can talk about advanced relationship capital techniques and doing a similar content on that as well.
If you're interested in learning the advanced techniques, I encourage you to reach out to David or myself, because we will let you know how to get into those deeper dives. Also, now that you've got your action steps, set up your accountability partner. When we say, I am going to work on my confidence in my presence, I'm going to do this by working on my posture, walking into a room with an upright head and my shoulders back. I'm going to work on making eye contact. You writing it down, popping it in the chat here, or writing it down for yourself is one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is to find somebody and tell them that this is what you're working on. Because when we tell someone else, that now gives us an external sense of accountability. I strongly caution you not to have your spouse be your accountability partner, because that can turn into quite a world war. Spouses do not make the best accountability partners. It can come across as nagging, and we have that relationship. But find somebody who's objective, and they'll say, hey, man, like, get your shoulders back, or whatever it is that you need to hear in whatever language you need to hear it. Find an accountability partner. Tell them what you're working on. Tell them when you are going to be 7 out of 10 times walking to a room with confidence and presence. Give them your goal and have them hold you accountable. So if you walk in and you're slumped over and you're leaned back and doing all the things that, you know, are showing that you're not engaged and are detrimental to your presence, ask them to call you out on it.
And I know a lot of engineers experience overwhelm, or you get into analysis paralysis, or you have a zillion things going on, and how do you sift through all that? Put it in your calendar. Go into Outlook, go into whatever calendar tool that you use, set an alarm to remind you to do this activity, so your phone can help you to be accountable to yourself as well.
So that's just accountability, because what research shows is when we have a goal, 98% of people do not actually fully achieve most goals, especially if it's a stretch goal and it's an area of discomfort for us. When we have an accountability partner, it increases your chances of reaching that goal by 63%. That's with a solid accountability partner who doesn't let you make excuses, who says, hey, you told me this was important to you, and what's going on because you're not working on it? You're doing all these other things. So that is so critical. And on top of that, if you have a very strong stretch goal, 98% of people who have a coach who is objective, who helps them with support and accountability and breaks it into the steps along the way, actually achieve those stretch goals. So just keep that in your mind. If you don't have accountability partner, if you don't have someone you feel safe asking to be an accountability partner, that's why coaches exist. Could be David or myself, could be somebody completely different, but that is the role of your coach.
You cannot stress enough that it's not best to have a family member be this person. I don't know if you're familiar with George Ross, who actually coached 2 U.S. presidents, said in a webinar recently, hire someone who is not a family member. So that's from someone who's been coaching for a very long time.
Absolutely. And so you've heard already, I come from the medical field. I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Phil. If you don't know who he is, Google him. He's all over the place. And he was a mentor of mine for some time. And his advice was always invest in yourself because you are your best bet. And coaches are the key to success because they have that objective ability to call you out on your BS. And this is the moment when you either continue to stay stuck and do the same things or you grow. So those are just a couple of our mentors and what they have to say about support and accountability. I'm going to leave the presentation part with my favorite quote of all times. It actually appears on the first page of my international best-selling book. It is called "The Secret to Change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." That's Socrates. He is a wise beyond years. This has stood the test of time because the reality is, if we focus on all the things we're doing wrong or how we did things yesterday, and if you're an engineer and you're an analysis paralysis person, you're thinking of all the worst case scenarios. What are the things that could happen? What are all the bad things that happened in the past? Oh, here we go again. You're focusing on the old, as opposed to having a growth mindset where you say, okay, this is where I want to be. I want to be able to have relational capital. I want to be able to add value. I want to be able to grow my network, have a wealth of opportunities, and have the opportunity to up my stock in my next W-2 or transition my skill set to another industry. What do I need to do? Focus on where you're going, leave the past behind you, and every step of the way, and yes, you're going to have stumbles, and yes, there are going to be challenges. That's just how growth works. Failing forward and continuing to be focused on the new and focus all of your energy on where you're going. That's the key to success.
So like we said at the beginning of the presentation, thank you so much for sending us your emailed questions. I have them open here and actually see some of the people who are in the live webinar today. I will be asking your questions. So David had asked, what would make a candidate more successful at an interview? And I think specifically if it's a behavioral style interview, I'd like to say, Jen, with your experience with small business owners, what is your perception of this? What makes a candidate more successful in an interview?
Well, I can tell you that I have been on the side where I brought people in. I've been on both sides of that table. And with my clients, some of the things that are most important are the eye contact, having that relaxed posture. Because if you walk into an interview and you're real tense and you're looking down and you're not making that eye contact and you're not feeling relaxed in the situation, what we find is that it's a real kind of struggle to get through the interview. The other thing that is really key is body language, really leaning in, coming prepared and showing interest. Hey, David, thank you so much for the opportunity to interview with me. Burns & McDonnell is a company that I've researched so extensively, and I know that you're the experts in the area. I really love the opportunity to come and speak with you. Having done your research, coming prepared, and then the key is your presence. When you walk in the door, if you are on time, and for those watching, being early is being on time, prepared, do your research, know who you're sitting across the table with, even if it's just a little bit, and being interested, engaged, and having one or two key questions to ask. Hey, I know this about this organization, but can you tell me more why this is the company for me? Because that shows that you are in demand. Regardless of whether or not you have other interviews, you are in demand. You're actually interviewing the company.
And so one thing to add there, I would say, think of your answers in terms of saying a concise story that focuses on results. We'll go into that a little bit more the next time. So Caitlin had asked, I want to create a lasting impression. How do I build connections with people besides just talking about hobbies?
I think you're better to ask that question.
So kind of like we alerted to earlier, Caitlin, I know you're in the call. It was, the example with the client, learning that that person had a son that, had just graduated as an environmental engineer. So how do I add value? I went and found another environmental engineer and said, hey, would you mind doing this? And because of the relationship I had with that person, they were more than happy to say, yes, David, we've worked together on other projects. I'd be more than happy to do this to help your client out. And so that's just a small example of relational capital.
And another example, since he'd already gone over that, how do we build those relationships without hobbies? It's not just about the hobbies. It's about, hey, what is your big goal this year or next? Like, where is it that you see yourself in 5 years? What would be your ideal life? Because that takes hobbies out of it. What it does is it explores even more things. And if you think back to earlier in the presentation, we said find their core values. When you ask a question like, hey, what is it that you see for yourself in the next 5 years? Like, what would be the best outcome or your ideal life? They're gonna tell you their core values. They're gonna say, well, I really see myself having more time to spend with my spouse, going traveling, being able to see the world and learn new things. This tells you that they're a lifelong learner, that they have adventure, or they want new experiences. So you can glean a lot from an open-ended question like that. And truly, building relationships is about them. It's about leaving ourselves behind and really having that giving outlook. And how can I add value to your life? Like, who can I connect you to? Oh, I hear that you want to travel. What's keeping you, what's holding you back? Why haven't you traveled now? There's no reason. Well, right now in COVID, there's a reason, but like pre-COVID, there are a ton of options. What if I put you in contact with the guy who books my travel and he does it on anybody's budget and can make that happen today? Would that be helpful to you? So thinking about the ways that you have solved creative problems, or the people you know who solve creative problems based on the values that have come across the table to you.
So Theophilos asks, tough question you get in an interview is, why do you want to leave your current company?
That's a great question. So that I highly recommend you be 100% forthcoming. Would you agree?
I agree. I would caution if your answer is, well, I just want to make more money, that's not going to be received well, even if that truly is your intent. It comes down to core values. What is the thing that you're passionate about? If they're going to ask you, hey, you know what, at this company, I love my current company, but it's not challenged me in the way that I want to be challenged. I'm looking to go here in my career, and I believe that your company offers me this opportunity. That is why I'm here. So what are the kind of responses that and how you respond to those questions can change the way the person reacts to it. And for information, right, how do you get better at anything? You need to know why you failed. For example, if we put a proposal together with the client and say, sorry, you weren't selected, we want to know why. Was it cost? Was it the right team? You know, things like that. And so if they don't tell you, if you get good at reading body language, like you say, I want more money, and they go like this, probably not getting the call back. So just being extra cognizant and being aware of the room, very important.
Well, can I add to that just a little bit? I'm going to challenge anyone, if you're hearing this or you're like, well, that's the reason. I have learned in multiple years working with coaching thousands of professionals and business owners. And a lot of times that's the surface level answer. Well, I want to make more money. I challenge you to ask yourself, what does more money mean to you? What does more money give to you? Because that's the honest answer to your question. It's not I want more money. It's I want the opportunity to grow in this area. I want the opportunity for upward mobility. I'm interested in leadership. I'm interested in developing technology. I'm interested in being a subject matter expert because that allows me to grow. I want to be able to travel. Well, guess what? Say that, you know what? I'm sitting across the table from you because I didn't have the opportunity to travel with my last employer. That is a huge sell, particularly in the oil and gas industry, because a lot of people are like, travel, no. But if travel is an interest of yours, what if you could travel for business, learn a new culture, immerse yourself in a different area, and you still get PTO and the ability to do that? That might open more doors. So ask yourself the deeper reason behind the money.
So I wanted to see, I think that's everyone I can see in the chat. Did we miss anyone? I have other questions that are here. We can go to those other questions, or wanted to open the floor to you now. Is there something that you saw in the presentation that you're not sure about or you want clarity around? Type your questions in now into the meeting chat. We're happy to answer those questions.
And while we're doing that, and if you have more questions, the other option is there is an option, if you were not afraid to ask it live, raise your hand, because they have a raise your hand feature if you go down to the participation side of things, or the chat function. So if you have a question, either pop it in the chat or raise your hand. We are happy to ask that now. And let's go ahead and address some of the others, because I do know I got a couple of emails from people with questions as well.
Certainly. So another question I got actually from someone who's interested in how do I attract good talent into my company was a question that I got. So what would you say to that?
That is a fantastic question. How do we attract good people? I think you've heard this already from us, but your network is your net worth. So if you are attracting a certain level of candidate and they are not at all the candidate that you were looking for, the best thing that you can do is look at your messaging. What are the words that you are using? What are you putting out in your job description for the position? Because obviously there's a certain level of person who is responding to that. So I would encourage anybody who is posting a position right now to think about what are the attributes of your ideal candidate. And I don't mean their technical skills and their soft skills either. What are the things that they care about? What most organizations hire for, aside from technical prowess and skills and soft skills, are they in alignment with our company culture? So putting into your description, your job description, things that cue in what your company culture is can help to narrow that field. We're looking for the candidate who is willing to go outside the box, wanting to learn, looking to travel and expand their opportunities, because that's going to eliminate people who are like, nope, I just want to go to work, keep my head down, make a paycheck, and go home.
So another question that was asked by a recruiter was, hey, I'm getting COVID-19 as an excuse not to engage in a meaningful commitment to hire my candidates. What do I do about this?
Yes, that is a very big thing, and we're seeing that in the business world. So I coach entrepreneurs and I coach executives as well, and a lot of people are using COVID as an excuse. But I will state that COVID has exposed people who didn't plan appropriately. When you go into a conversation with someone, if they've been caught with their proverbial pants down because they didn't have the liquidity that they needed in their organization, or they didn't have a cushion to even last 3-6 months in their business, that is a problem, and they are portraying that in the conversation with the recruiter. So we are in an oil and gas downturn. This is not going to go away anytime soon. It is going to take a while to recover back to pre-COVID, right?
Yes.
Would you say that?
So I think we're from our internal sources, we're thinking this is a 2-year, maybe 3-year thing, but it's not like oil and gas is going away permanently. But for us, we've got to be able to take care of business now. So maybe this is a temporary shift where we can take the skills that we have, maybe go into a different industry for a time being. And if we love oil and gas, it's not going away permanently. It just might take a little bit of time for it to come back. And
so if you were that recruiter asking that question, maybe approaching the potential companies with the, listen, this is an opportunity to streamline. What if I could position you with candidates that not only have the technical expertise and the subject matter expert, but also have the ability to bring in business development? Would that open the door for you or be a conversation? Because I can share with you, I work with numerous companies, some in oil and gas and some in across multiple industries. And what we know to be true is that the right person, they always want to be connected with. They may be in a hiring freeze right now. That might be the case. But when you have the right candidate that is a strategic hire, not just to fill for a project or for a job, but the strategic hires, all companies are always looking for that. I know that. I own a couple of businesses. I am looking for that in my companies. I know that in healthcare it is true. I know that in oil and gas it is true. In fact, David got hired in a hiring freeze with his current company.
So the question you'd want to ask is, how can I make myself a strategic hireable? And so that might be something to ask yourself. Another question that David had asked was, is saying too much in an interview a bad thing? Can I say too much?
That depends on what you're saying. If you're talking about a lot of things and you have a negative spin on it, then you're saying too much the minute you open your mouth.
I think there is something to be said for, you want to be concise in your answers. If the interview has 10 or 12 questions and you're limited in time, maybe it's an hour, and then the first question takes an hour or 35 minutes just to answer the first question because it's verbose, that could be a struggle. So focus on getting your answers to be concise by practicing them. Also recommend getting in front of a mirror. And I know for me, when I was learning to speak publicly, the hardest thing for me to do was to get in front of the mirror, not blink, and just watch myself as I was presenting. That'll be tough the first few times you do it, but then once you get used to it, it's like riding a bike. It becomes second habit.
So we have a question in the chat. What does it mean to parrot exactly? Yes, the Google definition is to repeat mechanically. No, do not say exactly what they're saying. What you say is, for example, I hear that you're saying this. What I understand is that, right? So paraphrase a little bit. I hear that you're saying you're hiring strategically. What my understanding of strategic hire is not just the job description and the subject matter expertise or the lead engineer on a project, but also could you expand on the soft skills or the other things that you're looking for? So yes, you can pair it by paraphrasing and expanding on it, absolutely. But make sure that you're explaining that you understand the question. Part of the reason behind the parroting, I call it mirroring, David calls it parroting, it's the same thing, is to let the person know, number one, they were heard. Because all human beings want to be validated. So the reason that it's called, in psychology terms, it's called verbal backtracking. So David might say, hey, the grass is green. And I'm gonna say, I understand that your grass is green, but mine is brown. So what is the disparity? So if you hear them, I hear what they're saying. And if it's you're bringing in another element so that you have a mutual understanding.
Then have you ever heard this? Maybe you sent an email and didn't verify, and then you go back to talk to the person and they say, I thought you meant ... So it's a way, it's closed loop communication. You're making sure that the message that was communicated was received as it was intended. And I would say from industrial project experience, 90% of success is making sure the message that was communicated was the message that was understood. Those can be two different things.
Yeah, it'll save yourself a lot of heartache, whether you're working on a project or in an interview or meeting somebody and building a relationship, if you practice understanding. It really is the validation and then knowing that they are heard. All human beings want to be heard.
So another person asks, hey, the hiring or the recruiter people don't understand the full job role. It feels like they're just reading from some script. What do I do with that?
You're with the wrong recruiter. Oh, this is being recorded. I probably should not have said that.
Okay.
So honestly, communicating that. Let's be frank. If you are in a job role, would you rather be doing something and someone else behind the scenes is saying, oh, they're not doing a good job, and they never tell you? Or would you rather that you're not doing the job that they expect, that they come to you with feedback and say, hey, listen, I appreciate you're doing this work, However, you're doing this work over here, and what I really need is over here. You want them to communicate with you. So if you are working with a recruiter and you feel like they're just parroting a script to you, say, listen, I understand this. I would like to learn more. And can you get these information for me? And have an idea of what information that you would like to have from them. Because that not only helps them learn, but it also shows your interest. And then all of a sudden it becomes more about, okay, it's not about the job description. It's about, I'm going to put you to the top of the candidate pool. And maybe I'm going to roll you out to everyone instead of some of these other people, even if these other people have a broader experience range or what have you, because what you've done is you've given them a two-way conversation and feedback.
So some more questions. This is, I guess, a kind of admission to say, hey, I've been holding back on asking poignant questions because I don't want to be pushy. So what is pushiness if you're in a one-on-one situation or you're having an interview?
That's a great question. So pushiness is when you are inserting in. So I'm going to use an analogy, and I use this analogy with sales constantly. I do a lot of training on how to sell without selling. And so pushy is, imagine when you're a teenager and you're on your first date, or maybe you were in middle school and you're on your first date, and you really don't know, like you don't know each other. And at the end of the date, if you're the female and the boy moves in, you're like, whoa, I don't know about that, right? Anytime that you're moving in too quickly, you're going to see their body language, because what they're going to do is they're going to either lean back or they're going to move away. And so if you're looking at, I need to ask the question, do you have a position for me? What you do is you ask, hey, so what is the situation? Right now we're in pandemic, we're in the worst downturn that we've seen in a long time. The cycle keeps repeating itself. What is your outlook on positions with your company? It's a lot less like moving into, do you have a job? It's not that, it's really a mutual conversation and asking and opening the door. So the poignant questions can be asked in a way that is open-ended and do not feel like you're moving in for the kill. Does that adequately answer?
I think so. Another question is, I'll ask questions, but the responses I get back are vague.
So this is the ninja, listen, this is a ninja technique that we use, and I train all my clients in this because it works. When a question is vague, you come from a place of curiosity, you lean in and you say, oh, okay, so I hear that you said this. Can you tell me a little bit more? I'm really curious. When you lean in, you lower your voice slightly and you say, wow, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? I'm really curious. Then they perk up. It's like, oh, this person really wants to know what I have to say. It's human psychology. And so all of a sudden you've said, I'm curious, can you tell me more? And they might explore a little more, and then you use your parroting or your verbal backtracking and you say, okay, I hear that this is a situation, and you expand the topic instead of collapsing the topic.
So another question was, what's the appropriate way to ask about compensation if I'm in an interview?
So I think that's a twofold question. To ask for compensation in an interview, number one, did you get an offer? Did they express interest? Number two, come prepared. Know your numbers. This is key negotiating skills. And if you have never negotiated your salary up and down or compensation up or down, we're actually going to have a workshop on that in a couple of weeks. But negotiation is a two-way street. Know what you're looking for and say, hey, listen, I know that we are talking about this position. If you've had them and they're leaned in and they're ready and they're like, what do you think about a job or working for this organization? And what do you think about this? Talk about, hey, I'm really excited about the opportunity for upward mobility, the opportunity to develop my technical expertise, the opportunity to enter into a business development arrangement. And I'm really excited about the opportunity, should this be a good fit, to negotiate a compensation plan that shows my dedication to the company because I really agree with your values and I'm in alignment with your core culture. And so what that does is opens the door for them to say, yes, this is not what this is about. This is not what this is about. So you've opened the door. It's about opening the door. Anytime you want an answer to something, you have to get a series of yeses. The same rule applies in sales. Open the door. Collect yeses. Know that you're the candidate before you move in for the kill with compensation. and say, I would really like to discuss what a comp package looks like if this is a mutual good fit, because I'm hearing that this is your culture and these are in alignment with my core values. And it's an opportunity for me to really develop. And I see this being a long-term commitment. And then when you talk compensation, I want to explore what is it that you really are looking for, because some companies are very impressed if you come up with a performance-based pay idea, meaning maybe you want to, like, I'm going to use a real even number because it's easy to say. Maybe you want to make $100,000 this year. It's a factor of 10. It makes it so simple. Maybe you want to make $100,000. Maybe you know to pay your bills you need $80,000. So maybe you come in with your comp package and say, you know what, I really like a salary of $90,000, and I would like performance-based pay based off of A, the business that I bring in, and B, the performance that I do. If I exceed expectations, I would like a bonus structure of 3% of my salary, 10% of my salary. You make that decision, but have that idea so that you can have that conversation, because a lot of companies are moving towards some sort of performance-based pay. If you're in oil and gas, you know about bonus structures, particularly as you go into management roles. It's in every industry. My industry has performance-based pay. Medicine has performance-based pay. There's always some sort of element of that. So if you know your numbers and what you want and what you desire to get to where you want to be, having that knowledge on the background and know what your bottom line is when you come to the table, and having a creative solution is key. And one of the ninja skills I teach some of the new graduates that I've worked with when it comes to talking about compensation is, hey, listen, I get it. You've moved through. And if you were in Houston, particularly, oil and gas is hire, fire, hire, fire. Like it's not a lot of loyalty on either side of the employee or the employer in some cases. So if you're in an industry where there's not a lot of brand loyalty, then understanding ways to get creative with compensation, say, listen, I want to prove myself to you. Why don't you put me on a salary of this for the first 90 days and you evaluate whether I'm a good fit. And if I'm a good fit, then we'll talk about and renegotiate the package and have what that looks like for you.
And there's one last question from the emails. My LinkedIn profile is not matching every single word of a job rec. And so they're saying I'm not qualified. How do I handle that situation? So I'll say to start is you do need to have, hiring managers are looking for buzzwords. They are looking for specific skill sets. So there is some element to, you want to have the right language in there. But I guess, Jen, what would you say to the how can you arrange and put your transferables in there to tell a different story?
Right. So this is a twofold question. And the reason you're on this call is because you know that people don't necessarily hire you from a LinkedIn profile. It's one of the ways that they filter you out. So when you put your LinkedIn profile together, don't give them an excuse to filter you out. Make sure you know the keywords for the position, have the keywords in there, and you can do that because I can tell you, you know what the keywords are. Technical skill sets are keywords, right? What else are keywords? Business development, relational development, leadership, ability to work on a team. Have those things in your skill sets so that they already know that you're a team player and that you're looking to develop your skills. Another one is open-minded, adaptability, and flexibility. So when you're looking for your opportunity, ensure that you have that in there and in your interests or in your bio. But the other side of it is why you're on this call. The majority of people who get the next opportunity are people who have relationships. So start now. If you are looking to make a move, a change, or you've been let go and you're looking to either switch industries or get your next W-2, start building relational capital. Because if you want to work for, I'm going to just throw out a random company. If you want to work, but that's not oil and gas. If you want to work for Coca-Cola, go meet people who work for Coca-Cola. Meet people who know people who work for Coca-Cola and build those relationships because they can get you in the door. And maybe they invite you to a company event and you just mingle and you build relationships there, because if you have a relationship or you have somebody who can get you in the door, you bypass all of those other screenings. You bypass the LinkedIn buzzword screening. You bypass the HR thinking, oh, this is not a great resume because they're looking at 5,000 for one position right now. And so the relationships are really key. If you want in on one of my organizations, I go first to my network, my trusted network, and I say, hey, listen, I'm about to hire. And this is what I'm looking for. do you know somebody who is either looking to make a move or who is thinking about this area? And I will tell you that 90% of my hires come from recommendations from trusted people in my network. How does that work for you? Do you guys tend to do relational?
We absolutely look at referral candidates first. If somebody knows someone and they recommend, hey, this person, that gives them an automatic bump through the process. Is absolutely true.
So some of the things that we've gone over today, like how to get in the door, how to make an impression, how to build a relationship. And I don't mean a superficial relationship. I don't care if you got 1 million followers on a social media. That is not a relationship. That doesn't mean that you have a very strong network. That just means you have a lot of fans for whatever content you're posting out. If you have strong relationships with people who can open doors for you, that is really what relational capital is all about. So if you're asking about LinkedIn isn't matching every word, it doesn't even matter if you have the right relational capital.
So that was everything we wanted to cover today. We've gone a tad bit over, but I think this was pretty valuable. Does anyone have any final thoughts or questions before we conclude?
We'll go ahead and do that, and I'm just gonna give you a little reminder. If you would like to learn more information and you're here, pop in the chat your email. We're happy to send you our slide deck. We will be rolling out the replay to anyone who came through the registration form, or if you got here through David's email, we will send you a replay. The replay link will be live for 3 days. That is for our safety and our security as well. And so you'll have access to seeing the replay if you do so desire. And we really want to encourage you, if someone you know needs to hear the things that were here today, or you have a friend or family that could benefit from this, please feel free to share the replay with them. Because the reality is that's adding value to your relationships. If you have someone in your network that needed to hear something about soft skills, share with them, because that's you adding value to them. Maybe they learn something from this too. So that's how adding value and building relationships works.
So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I know it's a lot to get on a webinar on a Saturday, but we appreciate your time. Again, we're committed to adding value to the community. I care a whole lot about people in oil and gas. I've lived it. I've been through 3 down cycles. It's not fun. But the way we get through this is by building relationship capital and helping each other out. Thank you so much.